What happens to a TV show when it disappears so fast that even nostalgia forgets it? The 1970s were packed with bold experiments, risky pilots, and strange ideas that never made it past a single season. Some were too weird for primetime, some were too expensive, and some were simply victims of bad timing. Today we uncover 10 forgotten shows that vanished almost instantly. Let us begin. Number 10. Salvage 1, 1979. Salvage 1 is one of the strangest lost creations of the 1970s, a show built on a premise so bold that it almost feels like science fiction folklore. It starred Andy Griffith not as a sheriff or a small-town hero, but as a junkyard owner with an impossible dream. He wanted to build a private spaceship from scrap metal and travel to the moon. The show leaned heavily into the tone of hopeful adventure, a mix of frontier spirit and late-decade space-age optimism. Viewers at the time found the idea charming, but networks struggled to place it in a category. Was it family adventure? Was it science fiction? Was it comedy? This confusion became the show's downfall. Most episodes revolved around inventive missions, wild but light-hearted rescues, and technological stunts that pushed the boundaries of weekly television budgets. The production costs soared, which made executives uneasy. Critics did not understand what the show was aiming for, and the ratings reflected that confusion. It lasted only one season, fading quickly once the network shifted focus to more marketable shows. Yet those who watched it remember its unusual heart. Salvage 1 remains a relic of a moment when television dared to dream big, even if the dream survived for only a brief spark of time. Let us continue. Number 9. Delta House, 1979. Delta House arrived on television with enormous expectations. It was a network attempt to capture the chaos and success of the blockbuster comedy Animal House, but lightning rarely strikes twice. The show tried to continue the wild fraternity spirit of the original film with outrageous pranks, loud personalities, and rebellious humor. But translating big-screen anarchy into weekly broadcast television was a battle from the first episode. Standards for primetime were far stricter than the movie that inspired it, so every script was toned down, every gag softened, and every boundary tightened. What remained was a series that felt trapped between two worlds, too tame for fans of the film and too rowdy for conservative television audiences. Behind the scenes, production challenges grew. Writers wanted to keep the energy of the original intact, while the network insisted on safer material. This constant tug of war shaped every episode, and by the time the show reached its 13th episode, it was clear the experiment had failed. The cast did what they could, and some performances hinted at the spirit the show desperately wanted to capture, but restrictions smothered the potential. Ratings fell, and Delta House was canceled, quickly vanishing from schedules and rarely mentioned again. Today it survives mostly as trivia, a reminder that adapting a cultural phenomenon takes more than brand recognition. It takes freedom, timing, and the willingness to embrace chaos, something the show was never allowed to do. Yet for viewers who caught those brief weeks on air, it remains a strange nostalgic blip, a promise of unrestrained comedy that never fully arrived. Number 8. Project UFO, 1978. Project UFO was born during a time when public fascination with extraterrestrials was reaching its peak. The 1970s were filled with documentaries, tabloids, and televised specials claiming sightings and abductions. Inspired by real Air Force case files, the show attempted to dramatize these investigations with a grounded, almost procedural structure. Every episode followed two government agents as they interviewed witnesses, examined physical evidence, and tried to balance skepticism with curiosity. Unlike other science fiction programs of the decade, Project UFO presented its stories as if they were factual, even when dramatized. This serious tone attracted viewers early on, but it also limited the show's ability to fully embrace imagination. Many expected something more sensational, while others wanted a clearer stance on whether extraterrestrials were real. Writers attempted to balance that tension, leaving the mysteries open-ended, but this creative restraint made the show feel repetitive. Behind the scenes, budgets were tight and special effects were minimal, forcing the production team to rely heavily on dialogue and atmosphere rather than spectacle. With time, ratings dropped and the show was canceled after 2 seasons. Once removed from the schedule, reruns were rare, and the series disappeared into obscurity. Still, Project UFO holds an interesting place in television history. It was one of the first shows to treat extraterrestrial encounters as serious investigations rather than campy fiction. It walked so later series could run. For those who remember it, the show offered a haunting what-if, lingering in the mind long after its brief broadcast life ended. Number 7. Logan's Run, 1977. Logan's Run was adapted from the popular science fiction film, but the transition from cinema to television came with enormous challenges. The original movie delivered a provocative vision of a future society where citizens were executed at 30 to preserve limited resources. The film had style danger and an unsettling atmosphere, but when a weekly television version was ordered, the network demanded a softer tone. Concepts were widened, restrictions increased, and many of the philosophical undertones were removed. This shift instantly changed the show's identity. The television format followed Logan, his companion Jessica, and an android ally as they explored a post-apocalyptic landscape searching for sanctuary. This budget, however, could not support the world building needed to make the setting believable. Viewers noticed reused sets, weak effects, and stories that relied heavily on dialogue instead of action. Behind Behind the scenes, writers struggled with conflicting studio notes. Executives wanted a family-friendly adventure show, while creators fought to maintain segments of the darker material that defined the original story. The compromise left episodes feeling uneven. When compared to science fiction giants airing at the time, Logan's run appeared limited and restrained. Ratings fell steadily, and the show ended after a single season. Despite its short life, it earned a small, passionate cult, following that still admires its ambition. If anything, the show serves as a reminder that bold ideas sometimes wilt under network pressure, and that science fiction thrives best when creators are free to challenge viewers. Its legacy lives on as a curious what might have been. Number 6. The Fantastic Journey, 1977. The Fantastic Journey emerged during a wave of experimentation in 70s science fiction television. Networks were eager to create shows that blended mystery, fantasy, and futuristic ideas, but few attempts were as unusual or ambitious as this one. The story followed a group of travelers whose boat was pulled into the Bermuda Triangle and transported to a mysterious dimension filled with strange civilizations, advanced technology, and lost wanderers from different eras. Every episode introduced a new pocket world with its own rules, dangers, and conflicts. It was a bold idea, but also an expensive one. Sets needed frequent changes, props had to be built for single use, and the writing team had to invent new cultures almost every week. Production struggled to keep up, and creative disagreements became common. Some wanted the show to lean toward philosophical storytelling, while others preferred a more adventurous tone. As the identity of the series shifted, audiences were not sure what to expect. Ratings were unstable from the start. Despite a loyal faction of young viewers, the broader audience found the concept too inconsistent. Budget pressures forced the network to scale back, and the show was canceled after only 10 episodes. Yet fans who remember it speak of its imagination, its willingness to explore ideas rarely seen on network television, and its haunting sense of wonder. The Fantastic Journey vanished quickly, but it remains one of the strangest lost treasures of 70s genre TV. Number 5. Kolchak, the Night Stalker, 1974. Kolchak, the Night Stalker, is now remembered as a cult classic, the seed from which modern supernatural investigation series would eventually grow. But during its original broadcast, it was considered a failure. The show followed newspaper reporter Carl Kolchak, a stubborn, relentless investigator who uncovered vampires, ghosts, demons, and creatures hidden beneath everyday urban life. Each story was framed as one man's desperate attempt to reveal the truth, only to be dismissed, ridiculed, or forced into silence. While viewers today appreciate the show's pioneering blend of horror and mystery, audiences in the 70s struggled with its unusual tone. Some found it too frightening, others found it too campy. Behind the scenes, tensions ran high, scripts were rewritten constantly, budgets were limited, and creator frustrations were well documented. Lead actor Darren McGavin pushed through grueling production schedules and often clashed with executives over creative direction. Episodes became increasingly chaotic, and the network lost confidence. The show was canceled after a single season. However, the legacy of Kolchak is enormous. Without it, later giants like The X-Files and Supernatural would look very different. What once seemed like a shaky, short-lived oddity transformed into a blueprint for decades of paranormal storytelling. Kolchak may have burned out quickly, but the spark it left behind would ignite generations of fans and creators. Number 4. Planet of the Apes, 1974. Planet of the Apes arrived with one of the strongest brand names of the decade, yet its fate on television was surprisingly brief. The original film franchise was a cultural powerhouse blending social commentary with groundbreaking makeup and world building. The studios hoped that a weekly adventure series would capture the same enthusiasm. The result followed two astronauts stranded on a future Earth, ruled by intelligent apes. Alongside a sympathetic chimpanzee scientist, they navigated dangers, political tensions, and moral dilemmas. But the constraints of television quickly surfaced. Makeup that looked stunning on film became far more challenging under a tight television budget. Storylines had to be simplified to fit recurring episodic formulas, and the darker philosophical themes of the films were diluted. Viewers expecting the depth of the franchise were disappointed, and new audiences found the pacing slow compared to other action shows of the time. Production was expensive, and the network grew uneasy with the rising costs. After only 14 episodes, it was canceled. Despite its short life, the show attracted a devoted fan base and remains a fascinating lost chapter in the Apes universe. In hindsight, the show attempted something too ambitious for its era, but its commitment to world building and moral reflection still earns admiration from genre enthusiasts. Number 3. The Oregon Trail, 1977. The Oregon Trail was one of the decade's most ambitious historical dramas, yet it disappeared so fast that many viewers never even knew it aired. Starring Rod Taylor as rugged wagon master Evan Thorpe, the series attempted to bring frontier realism to primetime television. The premise followed families journeying west in the 1800s, facing treacherous landscapes, illness, unpredictable weather, and conflicts with hostile forces. It aimed for authenticity, using remote outdoor filming and period-accurate props, but this commitment to realism created enormous strain behind the scenes. Production was brutal. Filming in rough terrain caused delays, damaged equipment, and forced constant reshoots. Horses, wagons, and large ensemble scenes required coordination that stretched budgets thin, far beyond what what the network expected. Writers also struggled to find the balance between historical harshness and the family-friendly tone executives demanded. As a result, episodes shifted between gritty drama and soft sentimental storytelling, confusing the audience the show hoped to attract. When ratings failed to stabilize, the network panicked. Only 6 episodes aired before the show was abruptly canceled, leaving several unaired installments shelved and forgotten. Without reruns or syndication, the Oregon Trail faded instantly from public memory. Yet those who revisit it today see the spark of something more, a rugged, atmospheric series that might have thrived in a later era. The Oregon Trail became a casualty of its own ambition, a frontier story lost on the trail it tried to honor. Number 2. The Magician. 1973. The Magician stood out as one of the most unusual crime dramas ever aired in the 70s. Instead of detectives using guns or traditional methods, the show featured Bill Bixby as Anthony Blake, a stage magician who used illusion, sleight of hand, psychology, and misdirection to solve crimes. At a glance, it looked like a fresh, inventive idea, and early episodes captured strong viewer curiosity. However, the concept brought enormous pressure. Bixby insisted on performing his own magic and stunts, which added authenticity, but significantly slowed schedules. Every episode required careful planning, rehearsals, and coordination with professional illusionists. The writers also faced a constant challenge, balancing mystery plots with the need to showcase magic tricks that felt impressive but believable. As production difficulties increased, budgets swelled beyond what the network considered safe. Although fans admired the show's sophistication, ratings fluctuated. Without consistent promotional support, The Magician could not secure a long-term audience. After a single season, the show was canceled. Over time, it slipped quietly out of public memory, overshadowed by Bixby's more famous roles. Yet those who revisit it today find a clever, stylish show ahead of its time, one that blended performance art with crime solving in a way few series ever attempted again. Number 1. The Immortal. 1971. The Immortal opened with a gripping science fiction premise. A man named Ben Richards discovered his blood granted immunity from disease, aging, and illness, making him effectively immortal. This miraculous condition drew the attention of a ruthless billionaire who wanted access to his blood to prolong his own life. Each episode followed Richards as he fled across the country, trying to stay one step ahead of wealthy hunters determined to capture him. The concept held enormous potential, blending action, suspense, and philosophical questions about mortality and exploitation. But the show struggled almost immediately. Budgets were limited, and episodes often reused locations and action sequences. Writers tried to explore deeper themes, but network demands pushed the show toward a more conventional chase format. The repetition hurt ratings. Lead actor Christopher George brought emotional weight to the role, but behind the scenes, the production was fraught with creative disagreements. Some wanted the show to lean heavily into science fiction, while others wanted a grounded thriller. The split vision weakened the overall impact. The Immortal was canceled after a single season, leaving its story unfinished. Yet the show's eerie central idea continues to fascinate those who rediscover it. A man hunted for his own blood remains one of the most compelling, forgotten premises of 70s television. Short-lived shows often burn the brightest, even if only for a moment. These forgotten series from the 1970s remind us that television history is filled with bold ideas, strange experiments, and creative risks that disappeared before audiences could truly appreciate them. Some were too visionary, some were too chaotic, and some were simply released at the wrong time. Yet each one left behind a small spark. Which one did you remember?